To Candidate Forum from AM 1490 WBTA and our news partner, the Batavian. This is Dan Fisher, and I'm here with Howard Owens, publisher of the Batavian, and we'll be asking the questions to our candidates, and we'll meet them in just a moment. Election Day is, of course, Tuesday, November 3rd, and, most of the national pundits call this an off-year election, but that's hardly the case locally when you consider that all three Batavia City Council at-large seats will be decided on Election Day. All 9 seats on the Genesee County Legislature will also be decided, although only a couple of them are actually contested. But our candidates this morning are candidates for Batavia City Council at-large, and our guests this morning are Phil Ricci and Frank Ferrando. And asking our first question of our candidates is Howard Owens. Howard?
Thank you, Dan. President Obama has made it a priority for the federal government to become more transparent. Frank, we'll start with you. What will you do to bring more openness and more transparency to city government?
I think, Howard, that some of the things that we have been doing lately at City Council, inviting the public to come and speak, sharing all of our views for the public at open meetings as much as possible, limiting the number of executive sessions, which I think has been an issue that we've dealt with lately, and only go into executive session when it's imperative that we protect the rights of the city and don't create a situation that could be libelous for the city. I think we have to have, I would like to see our conference sessions videotaped rather than the business sessions, because if things are working smoothly, the issues ought to be discussed, worked through at the conference session, and the business sessions, which they have been lately, rather routine, because all of the issues dealt with at the conference sessions. One of the things that's not happening is we're not videotaping the conference sessions, and I think it's more important to videotape the conference sessions than it is to tape the business sections, videotape the business sections. So things of that nature to open up council as much as we can to the public, to get the public as much involved in council as we can, because we're there to represent this community.
Great. Phil?
Well, I agree with everything Councilman Ferrando just said, and I'll even add one more to it, is I think something that's an easy thing to do is as soon as you know what's going to be on the agenda or something's agreed upon to be on the agenda, instead of waiting till after the meeting is over, any supporting documentation that is deemed, of course, not libelous or whatever to anyone, I would say you put that right out onto the city webpage. Put it right out there for everyone to see, so walking into a meeting, people know what's going on, they can research the facts, they know what's going to be discussed. But I agree with everything Councilman Ferrando is saying. Basically, I think that apathy has been bred lately, not because people really don't care, but because they don't feel like their voice is being heard. I think there's just a lot of things that have been discussed and have happened, and they weren't a part of the process. All they're getting is the final answer, and they feel, in some cases, betrayed by that, and that's fair. So I agree with everything Councilman Ferrando said. I think that's a great idea, videotaping, but I think there's some simple things that can be done right away, and one of them is just as soon as the information has been decided upon, put it right out on the website, let anyone that wants to have it be able to have it and be a part of the process, absolutely.
Phil, along the lines of this transparency in government, given the recent firestorm, really, over the suspected breach of confidentiality out of an executive session, can you imagine a time when you believe it would be proper to reveal information from an executive session?
Well, I think we have to understand executive session is a very useful tool, but like any tool, it can be used improperly. There's a lot of things that are discussed in executive session that Councilman Ferrando was alluding to that, like in a conference session, can be brought out and discussed openly. I think what we utilize too much of executive session is just we discuss too many things there, and we work through too many processes in there. I think that executive session can be great to protect the city when there is absolutely some kind of litigation or personnel issue or something to that where you need those protections. Everything else, though, I've heard about it with land discussion, land sale discussion, or just working through different issues. That stuff can be talked in conference, videotape it like Councilman Ferrando said, or just in public, business sessions in the open. So yeah, I really think limiting the amount that you use executive session to only those necessities is important.
Frank, you touched on it in your initial response, but is there a time when you'd ever see yourself revealing information from an executive session?
Myself, Dan, no. I think the confidentiality is imperative. That's why you go into executive session. I agree with Phil that we shouldn't go into executive session unless there's an absolute necessity. I can tell you this, that in 8 years on council, although executive session sometimes is put out there as sort of a political thing, I cannot think of a single time that we went into executive session that it hasn't been necessary to go into executive session. I can't think of a single time that we went into executive session to hide something from the public. We were always advised by our legal counsel. It had to do with things like negotiations, personnel, land issues, all of those. Now, I will say this. There are an occasion when you're in executive session, you begin to talk that maybe some things were discussed that maybe could have been discussed out but not to any malicious extent. It's just that in the course of discussion, anything that happened in executive session when the time was right was brought out to the public. But I can't think of a single time. I know there have been times that there have been members on council that wanted to make an issue of the executive session to whatever end. That has never been the case.